I'm going to tell you something that has been going on, actually happened on Friday, and you will understand why in a minute. I wasn't comfortable telling you until I had things in hand. And I was going to tell you on Monday, but a few news stories, small news stories, came out about this thing, and I really realized how important this was to the left. So I waited until now. This is an exclusive from Blaze, theblaze.com. Exclusive. Roe versus Wade archive auctioned off, now in the hands of pro-life conservative Glenn Beck. The archive of historic documents central to the Roe versus Wade case that temporarily guaranteed abortion rights across the United States, a ruling long extolled by eugenicists and other varieties of leftists, recently went up for auction. It did not, however, end up in the hands of Planned Parenthood or some blue state gallery. Coffee, and many of those upset about the overturning of Roe in June, were dealt a second blow this week in a move likely to enrage leftists, including those terrorists the Department of Justice has proven unable or unwilling to hold accountable. Nationally syndicated radio host and co-founder of the Blaze Media, Glenn Beck, acquired the collection, sealing the deal on March 6th. Roe versus Wade is history, and now that history is in the hands of a pro-life conservative. The Supreme Court's 1973 ruling in Roe versus Wade proved to be as decisive as it was deadly. That should be divisive, I think. For many Americans, it signaled the country's embrace of eugenics and federal excuse to slaughter at least 63 million babies. For others, the decision and the legal battle that preceded it were together regarded as a triumph for women's rights, warranting a quasi-religious reference that now is resulting in the erection of commemorative graven images in buildings in New York. Linda Coffey's archive of Roe versus Wade documents, which some proponents of abortion may regard as relics, recently went to auction. According to the Los Angeles auction house Nate D. Sanders Auctions, Coffey's collection documents the entire journey from the letter Coffey wrote to Sarah Weddington proposing that the two women work together to challenge the Texas abortion statute, to the receipt of $15 given to Coffey after filing the case in Texas, to the original affidavit signed by Norma McCorvey, otherwise known as Jane Roe, to the Supreme Court quill pins given to Coffey by the court after successfully arguing the case. The auction house noted further that the archive contains nearly 150 pages of documents and letters related to the case. Linda Coffey and her lesbian partner, Rebecca Hart, told D Magazine recently that they had curated the collection after the West Nile virus nearly killed Coffey. The near-death experience, coupled with the overturning of Roe versus Wade, prompted Hart to tell Coffey, "You might live to be 88 like Judge Sarah Hughes, but you need to get this stuff to the next generation." Hart said, "We don't know who's going to end up acquiring it, but hopefully it will motivate some of the people to get into law or politics or whatever, because it needs to be challenged." Beck indicated that Coffey and Hart got their wish in getting the collection to the next generation. However, he suggested that, quote, "they have passed it on to a generation that perhaps is less focused on the so-called human right to kill and more on the human responsibility to care, love, and protect both the mother and the child." The collection goes to Glenn Beck, based in a state where the slaughter of the unborn has been banned except in special circumstances. Bidding opened at $50,000. The winning bid went to Beck, blah, blah, blah. Beck was surprised that he took home the collection, having previously figured he would lose to someone, quote, like Bill or Melinda Gates, who are very much interested in those things that Dickens' Scrooge would have described as policies that, quote, decrease the surplus population, end quote. Although the price was steep, Beck and his wife both agreed the real price of these documents were the lives of at least 60 million children. If we can use this to help expose this culture of death and Moloch worship, any monetary price we could personally pay would be worth it. These documents chronicling the efforts that ultimately led to tens of millions of deaths and the strengthening of what some reckon to be a culture of death will now be provided with added historic context of pain, suffering, and deaths resulting from the ruling. Beck said, "I think the case joined with the testimony of those who have now had abortions, who have been forever scarred, will be a powerful presentation. It's not just the life of the baby we should be concerned about, but also the mother. The killing of one's unborn child can hold a mother in suffering for the rest of her life." Beck considers the juxtaposition of cause and consequence when presenting Coffey's collection to be incredibly important, as it sheds light on the darkness and the evils that come from making science our God and the cheapening of life. Those like Margaret Sanger, he said, are no better than those doctors and nurses that were killing the children who were deemed useless eaters. Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, is a long-celebrated icon of pro-abortion activists who sought to sterilize so-called undesirables by force and other means. In Sanger's own words, morons, mental defectives, and epileptics, along with criminals, the poor, the illiterate, and the unemployed, were unfit to breed and should therefore be precluded from doing so. In a 1923 New York Times article, Sanger wrote, quote, "Birth control is not contraception indiscriminately and thoughtlessly practiced. It means the release and cultivation of better racial elements in our society and the gradual suppression, elimination, and the eventual extermination of defective stock, those human weeds which threaten the blooming of our finest flowers of American civilization," end quote. Margaret Sanger, who started the Negro Project in 1939, wrote to a project director suggesting that black ministers had to gain the trust of the communities the birth control initiative was supposed to victimize, saying, quote, "We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population," end quote. The New York Post recently reported that nearly 24 million black babies have been aborted since 1973. Beck intimated that Coffey's archives will be at home in his collection documenting the culture of death and its proponents. I have in my German eugenics collection the last prescription Joseph Mengele wrote at the Children's Hospital that he heralded. It was for the drug that they used to kill the children, most of the times without the knowledge of parents. The writing of that script was the last act before he left and opened his, quote, hospital in Auschwitz. What is happening here in America with not only abortion, but also gender mutilation and euthanasia is evil. It is the same blood sacrifice that we have seen throughout the history of man. We all know how this ends. But for me and my family, we have made our choice years ago. We will not remain silent in the face of evil. Never again means now. We will not follow the science. Instead, we will follow and serve the Lord. When asked whether Coffey's archive would end up at the American Journey Experience, which has over 160,000 artifacts, Beck replied, "We have not decided where its final home display will be, but it will debut this summer at the Blueprints of Freedom." It is it's a show that will show the American history, good and bad, including $75 million worth of documents and items from Christopher Columbus through today. Concerning the exhibit, Beck said, "It's an honest look at the good, bad, and the ugly of our own history, the founders, inventors, mercies, and massacres. The Roe Archives inclusion in the exhibit will underscore Coffey's bloody legacy that has been undone in the service of life and the proper reading of the Constitution." I would like your help on something on this. I think it is appropriate to hear from the women who may have believed the lie and had an abortion. And I'm going to ask you to do something that I'm sorry that I'm asking you to do. But would you please write down your experience and how you felt afterwards? Because I don't believe the majority of people wanted to shout their abortion. This is evil, what it does to children, but what it does to mothers as well. I'm going to give you a post office box to send those to on tomorrow's program. But I also want to ask, if you were a baby that mom tried to abort, would you write to us as well? I'd like to keep this with the collection. By the way, these documents, I am storing all of these documents because I truly believe that if we lose this fight, we are fighting people that hate America so much they will destroy our history. They will burn it. They will destroy it any way they can. And there is a final resting place for a lot of these items. Some of them have already been retired and are in those vaults. This will be one of them. We will most likely never take the originals out of that mountain vault because we're aware of Jane's revenge. But we are not afraid of Jane's revenge. These documents that I have collected over the years will be preserved. No matter how much anybody wants to destroy our country and our history, these will someday, God forbid if things go horribly wrong, be found, along with our original instructions on how to rebuild a free society.